And you can make fun of me if you want.
No, that's okay. I'm going to call this meeting to order, and if you could all please rise. Pastor Doug Pratt with the First Presbyterian Church is going to lead us in prayer this evening. Good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members, for this privilege of leading in prayer for you. Heavenly Father, thank you, first of all, for the great privilege of living in this wonderful part of creation and being in a free land where we, the people, can govern ourselves. Lord, as this calendar year has turned, we have a lot of gratitude that a tough and challenging year is behind us, and a lot of hope that the new year will be one full of promise and progress. We pray for these, our leaders, for our mayor and council and staff, that you might grant them wisdom and skill and guidance, that they may lead us and guide us and marshal our resources to bless our entire community. We pray also, Lord, that you be with those who are still struggling in many ways to recover from the effects of the storm and its aftermath. Be with each person and family and help them and bring the resources they need. I pray all of this in the name of the God whom I love and serve. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor. Councilman Schlachter, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
It'll be an honor, Mayor.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Councilwoman Carumba. Here. Councilman DeWitt.
Here.
Councilman Smith.
Here. Here.
Here.
Councilmember Gibson.
Here.
Councilmember Forbes. Here.
Well, good evening, everybody. We're now at our portion where we're going to have public comment on agenda items. Members of the public that would like to speak, please come forward. Good evening and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, Mayor. My name's Rita Height. I'm a resident of Imperial Bonita Estates on the Imperial River. I have two comments. First of all, I'm happy to see that you're proclaiming the month of January as Human Trafficking Awareness and Prevention Month. This is a large area that, along with the area in this part of Florida, is a large area of human trafficking. I come from, as you know, St. Louis, and that corridor of I-70 between St. Louis and Kansas City has a big human trafficking problem. So I applaud you again, this city that I've come to love, and I moved down here for a reason. I'm glad to see that you've taken this initiative and designated January as this very important month.
Wonderful.
Second comment is about Green Sheet 008, about the Imperial River. You know, I've come and talked to you before about the issues that IBE had when the river flooded. We know that the water management is dredging or cleaning up part of the river. We don't know if it started from the ocean to the bay or the bay to the ocean. I tried to call today and get some information on this, and I wasn't able to get a call back. But again, anything that we can do, you know, our river is small by where we live, but it was a mighty impact when it flooded. So every time this is on the agenda, I appreciate this, and whatever you all can do as the city council to help mitigate that flood and help clean up that river, we would appreciate. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
She has my information.
Okay. Good evening.
Hi, council members, mayor. I'm Chip Greenwood with Buffalo Chips Restaurant. Just came here to help promote my event in the park, January 20th, this month coming up. We're going to have a wing fest at Riverside Park, God willing. So, yeah, I just came basically for that and to talk about the amending of the special events ordinance too, and want to gather more information. So anyways, this is going to be a great event. I'm going to help start its inaugural year, first year. As you know, Buffalo Chips has had it at the restaurant. It kind of gets out of control with too many people in there. And then, so I had a tent in the parking lot, you know, a permitted tent in the parking lot. So it got bigger. So I think I want to take it to the next level and create a great event for the community. It's not for profit, really. It's just a nice community event, family friendly. around chicken wings, and this year I'm just going to provide the food myself, just solo vendor, co-oping with nonprofit Lions Club will do the beer. So and then we'll try to keep it family friendly though. Have some face painters, maybe get some bounce houses the next year or something. But so hopefully we'll attract people to the state for this thing. And we've had some really great wing contests in the past. Chip Simpson, a pro, is actually here. He's with the International Federation of Competitive Eating. So he ate like 70 chicken wings. But anyways, I don't know if he's coming this year.
Competitive eating. I like it.
So I'm here to also, if you have any questions for me, also, I'm going to stick around for that. But I wanted to make a comment just about amending the special events ordinance. It is needed. Obviously, I agree with that because we need to streamline this. The process. It's not easy going through the permitting and what have you. Sheriff's write-off, and it's my first one, so maybe it seems like it's a lot worse just for me this year. But so I understand your attempt to do that, and I agree with that. But here's the thing: I believe you should not limit the access to the park by the Tier 1A co-sponsored events or 1A or 2. I understand having to put controls on it, maybe charging more money, getting a bigger deposit, having a city official on site. I'll agree with that, but please don't make it harder on us, those people, to get in there. And I understand you're trying to prevent people from piggybacking on nonprofits and just getting in there, but that's not what we're doing. Lions Club is going to get 100% of the profits from this event, so I just want to make that clear, and I hope you don't go down that road. I know when you get more control, it makes it more complicated. I understand sometimes, but please don't make it harder on us trying to get that. It's a beautiful venue down there, so we hope to use it. The city has. That's about all I get. And and I think we're undervaluing it. I mean, you're charged $25 or $50 to get in there. To me, I think you could raise more money to use that beautiful venue down there. Just for the maintenance on the property, I'm sure it costs a lot. So, and I know you're losing tax base because you don't have anything sitting there, raising tax dollars. So, you could probably do a lot more. But thank you for the time, and I'll stick around and hear what we have to say about the amendment.
No.
And go Buffalo Bills! First time in the playoffs in 18 years.
Well, thank you very much for that. And I do, as you and I talked, I'm very sorry I'm going to be out of town that weekend, but please get us that material, and I'm happy to help promote it any way that I can. And go New England Patriots. Hello, Linda. How are you? Welcome.
Thank you. Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy New Year.
I'm Linda Schwartz. I live in Cedar Creek, and I'm here to support item 8A and to welcome the involvement of South Florida Water Management District in maintaining our waterways, especially Spring Creek, where I live. But I just wanted to let Council and South Florida Water Management know that this agreement is most welcome and look forward to working more closely with them. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Other members of the public that would like to speak, please come forward at this time. Okay, it's a nice crowd out there, but doesn't look like anybody else wants to speak. We're going to move on now to proclamations and presentations. If we could please have Nola and her group with the Human Trafficking Awareness Partnership, please come forward. Wonderful. Well, welcome. This is a proclamation by the City of Bonita Springs for Human Trafficking Awareness Month. Whereas January 2018 has been designated as Human Trafficking Awareness and Prevention Month by the federal government, and whereas the Lee County Sheriff's Office and community organizations founded one of the first human trafficking task forces in the country in 2005, which continues to be actively involved in the fight against modern-day slavery through the U.S. Attorney's Southwest Florida Human Trafficking Task Force, and whereas the state of Florida is recognized as one of the 3 states with the highest incidence of human trafficking and also one of the states which is doing the most to combat this crime in terms of legislation and victims treated, and whereas the Lee County School District and Human Trafficking Awareness Partnerships are collaborating on programs in the middle of high schools to teach children about the dangers of trafficking and how to protect themselves. And whereas the U.S. Attorney's Human Trafficking Task Force, Abuse Counseling Treatment, Catholic Charities, Human Trafficking Awareness Partnerships, Children's Advocacy Center, Florida Gulf Coast University, Hodges Universities, Kaiser University, and Lee Health are working collaboratively to build awareness through community and educational events and trainings, prevention programs for youth, businesses, and medical facilities. And whereas Human Trafficking Awareness Partnerships will conduct programs in Bonita Springs in partnership with groups like the Boys and Girls Club and the Bonita Springs YMCA, which will promote prevention and awareness of human trafficking in 2018. Now, therefore, I, Peter Simmons, do hereby proclaim the month of January 2018 be designated Human Trafficking Awareness and Prevention Month in Bonita Springs, Florida. Signed, Mayor Peter Simmons, January 3rd, 2018. Thank you.
We are really appreciative of this. Human trafficking obviously is a very important issue for all of us because it is such a horrible crime. One of the things I'm happy to see in here are these young, beautiful young kids who should never be scathed by this crime. And yet, unfortunately, the average age of entry into human trafficking is 11. So sometimes when we do our programs, people say, don't you think 11 is too young for kids to know about this? And I say, it certainly is. But unfortunately, they can learn about this not just from people who's teaching them, but from people who are trying to take advantage of them. So they need to know, and they need the support of the parents, of the school district, of the government, so that we can help. And the programs that we do in Bonita Springs and all around Southwest Florida can be with, for instance, the foster grandparents program that we just worked with this morning in Immokalee, and but it also involves a lot of art programs because we believe that people can learn through facts, but they can really learn and express themselves through art. And kids can express themselves through art, and they can understand that not only can they be victims, and that heaven forbid that should happen, but they can be teachers and people who actually are helping themselves and their peers once they know what to look for. So I'm very appreciative of that, and I'm giving this book and other books that we have produced that show the artwork that's been done in Lee County and Collier County since 2010 when we first started our outreach program. And we last year worked at Bonita Pueblo and the YMCA in Bonita Springs as 2 of the 15 10-hour programs. And we're very proud of those programs, and we just want to share them with you, and I've left some extra copies over there. So if there's anything we can do to help you and your church group or your school, we're always willing to come out and work with you. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Would you like to say Thank you very much for what you do, and I think we'll take a picture over here.
Take questions. Take questions.
I will always take one. Ask me anything.
The question is, human trafficking can be going on under our noses and we don't know about it. Is there anything you can tell us what to look for so that we can be aware of what's going on?
I think one of the things you can look for, especially when we're talking about children, is people who are paying undue attention to children and trying to influence them when, in spite of what they're learning in school or whatever. It's older men who are attracted to younger girls and who are taking advantage of them by tricking them into believing that they love them and that this is a great relationship and that that's where they need to be to get the love and attention that maybe they feel they're not getting from their parents or from their relatives, or maybe they feel like they're not doing well in school and they're not worth something, and a man comes up to them, meets them at a mall, talks to them, and starts convincing them that really they can be appreciated by someone else. And unfortunately, we have examples of older men in our community within miles from here. If we look at the Alvarez case and all these other cases where young girls were being targeted by older men and right under the nose of the parents, and it was not the parents' fault, it was that man's fault, and it led to the demise of that girl. We don't even now know exactly. And that's the kind of thing that can happen to any child. So that's what we have to watch out for. A behavior that changes dramatically from your sweet little 10-year-old to your child who's suddenly dressing inappropriately, who is not always easy to track. So, yeah, you have to be a good, watchful parent, neighbor, teacher in order to help, because it's not, no one person can prevent this from happening. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. If we could now have, let's see, we've got quite a few children here tonight. This is great. So from the Bonita Charter School, please. Please come forward.
Do you want the lead comment?
For the Bonita Springs Charter School?
For the Christmas essay contest?
Yes.
Well, yes, it is.
Did you, we have something we kind of want to call up?
Okay, absolutely. Come on up.
Do you mind real fast?
No,
give
not
it-
at all.
sorry.
Not at all. How you doing? Nice to see you.
Sorry.
Nice to see you. No, dive in. It's my style anyway. How you doing? Good to see you.
Yeah, you guys are heroes. All right, guys, quiet down. Bobby, I'm just going to say a little bit about the event. Can I say,
How are you?
can I say a little bit about the event?
Captain, how are you?
How y'all doing tonight? My name's Lieutenant Brian Prespaluski. I'm with the Lee County Sheriff's Office, Bonita Springs Community Policing Unit. Every year, the city supports, has our support. We do a Christmas essay contest with area schools. What we do is the three schools, Bonita Elementary, Spring Creek, and Bonita Charter. What we do is we actually go to the teachers in the schools. We ask them if they would like to participate in an essay contest. We come up with a different theme every year. This year's theme was, if I had a holiday wish, what would it be and why? These guys all went through 1,500 essays. The schools were great with the support we got back from the schools. We picked out K through 5th, and we picked out winners, and each winner, from all the donations that come from the community in the city of Bonita Springs, goes back to these kids. And what we did is we took them on a shopping spree to Target for the shop with a deputy and go around and do that. The overwhelming support we got from the city, thank you, Mayor and Council, for you guys supporting this. Also the schools, I mean, if it wasn't, education is such a big thing, it's big to me also. What we're trying to do is hit the holiday theme along with education. And this year, all these winners, we'd like to honor them here today with a certificate from the city and also their framed letters that they wrote. Some of this stuff would bring you to tears. Some of these kids speak from the heart, and they tell you exactly, if it wasn't their mom being here, we had a child that we actually adopted, a family this year too, that all he wanted was his mother, who had passed away about a month prior to that, and we adopted them. But all the proceeds from this comes back from all the businesses in the community. So, Mayor, thank you for allowing us to be here today. And
No, absolutely. And would you like to make the presentations to the children? Yeah, go ahead. However you guys.
do you want to call them out?
We'll start with Bonita Charter School, Julian King.
Congratulations. You want to have them come over here? Why don't you come on over here, honey? And there's,
Kaylee Van Ness.
is that right?
Jorge Marquino.
Is it Van Ness? Okay. I'm sorry.
Michelle Sneed. Moving on to Bonita Elementary School. Madison Vu.
You're welcome, honey.
Madison Shy. Bianca Olgan. Juan Fernandez. Sofia Marquez. From Spring Creek Elementary, Yamalito Nieto. Ashley Lopez.
There you go.
And Julie Stalte.
Mayor, one more quick thing.
Sure, absolutely.
You want somebody to take a picture?
Ashley Lopez?
Real fast, I just want to end on,
We've got-
this means what? We're done, that's it.
Okay. Is there anybody we did not call? Okay, great.
Just to end on this event we've been doing, this is our 5th year, I believe, we've been doing the essay contest. It's good that these kids, first of all, they're well educated. They wrote extremely well written essays. Second of all, it gives kids to be around a deputy sheriff and see the other side of a cop that isn't just seeing a cop pulling somebody over or taking somebody to jail. These guys got more out of this than, it meant a lot to us. And we appreciate your guys' support. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. Congratulations, guys. Congratulations. Keep up the good work, okay? Nice job. Congratulations, everybody.
Captain, you got a great team here. Great team. Yes. Well,
Absolutely. You got it. Great work. Thank you. Great job. Good? See you later. Yes.
how that church you're going to? Hey, Carl's going to it too, right? Oh, thank you. He's happy. Yeah.
Carl, thanks for your time. Thank you. Thanks, Harley. Thanks for your help.
Great job.
Peter? Yeah, hold on, let me put you back on speaker.
See you later. Yeah.
Nice guy. That was cute. That was so cute.
Very, very cute.
She came over here and marked this.
Okay.
Debbie.
All right, we're now going to move on to the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda will be considered as one unless a specific item is pulled. Does
Mayor?
anybody like to pull anything? Yes.
Before we start, we have on the telephone Councilmember O'Flynn. I just want to point out that our administrative code for policies requires a vote that he may participate via phone, that there is good cause for that, and you need to make that vote. Then he can vote on anything.
I'll make that motion.
I second it.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second to allow Deputy Mayor O'Flynn to participate by telephone. There's been a motion and a second. Further discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilman DeWitt.
Aye.
Councilman
Aye.
Southwell. Mayor Simmons.
Aye.
Councilman O'Flynn.
Aye.
Councilman Gibson.
Aye.
Councilman Forbes.
Aye.
Councilwoman Carumba.
Aye.
You may have been undecided on that vote, Peter. I couldn't quite tell, but we're glad you're with us on the phone.
I thought that was illegal.
And, okay, we're now going to move on to the consent agenda. There's one item there.
I move we accept it. Let's go
Okay, there's
forward.
been a motion to accept in a second. Further discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilman
Aye.
Southwell. Mayor Simmons.
Aye.
Councilman O'Flynn.
Aye.
Councilman Gibson.
Aye.
Councilman Forbes.
Aye.
Councilwoman Carumba.
Aye.
Councilman DeWitt.
Aye.
Okay, we're now going to move on to mayor and council member items. Item A is to direct staff to prepare an agreement with the South Florida Water Management District relating to the maintenance of stormwater conveyances in the city of Bonita Springs, including the Imperial River, Oak Creek, and Spring Creek. And this is from Councilman O'Flynn, Green Sheet 18010008. Peter, take it away.
Yeah, in the interest of not speaking from the ceiling, maybe Carl, you can take it. We've talked about this.
Yes, sir. Mayor, with your permission.
Yes.
So basically, many years ago, the city of Bonita Springs, after a flooding event, entered into an interlocal agreement with the South Florida Water Management District for the district to conduct maintenance activities in many water conveyances of the city. After a few years, that agreement expired. It was not renewed. And today, of course, we find ourselves in a situation where those conveyances need additional maintenance. The taxpayers of the city of Bonita Springs pay a significant amount of money into the South Florida Water Management District budget. And I think this proposal to have staff work on an interlocal agreement is one that would allow for those resources to come back to the city at a time when it's particularly important. Deputy Mayor, I don't know if there's anything else you'd like to add.
No, that sounds good. I'd make a motion to approve that.
There's been a motion and a second. Is there further discussion?
I have a couple questions, just
Yeah, Greg?
procedural. Is this going to, I know there's two, and this is, I guess, the city manager. I know we've hired Jim Beaver to do a study to see what we need.
Yes.
Lee County's doing a separate study to see what Southwest Florida, Lee County, Bonita Springs needs.
Right.
And now here's this one. Are those three going to collide somewhere and mess everything up is my question.
I think the answer to that is no. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
No, I would say, Greg, there are different things. This is just the normal maintenance of what are called our natural waterways. So, whatever happens elsewhere in terms of major projects, which obviously we want, this is kind of like brushing your teeth. It's got to be done regularly. And it was and has been in the past the responsibility of the district. And it's also what they do in various canals all over the water management district. So I think it just, in my view, puts the responsibility where it belongs, and it complements anything else we would do. It doesn't fight with anything we would do.
Okay, yeah, that's my biggest question is it going to fight if Jim Beaver comes back and says, you don't need this, and now we're saying we do need it. But okay.
Yeah.
My question.
Fred?
Yeah, conceptually, I'm for doing this. My recommendation would be that we prepare the scope of services, but all the whereases and all that I think it would be more appropriate that they would do it, and then the mayor would present this scope to the South Florida Water Management District. And I think they were receptive when I mentioned it to them in November. And the meeting, we just met with one of the board representatives. In fact, I think not only did I, but the mayor and Amy and Greg, and I think that they're receptive to it, but I think it would be a little, if we could do a little give and take and do it that way, I think it might be better, but I'm for it.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I agree with you. And Peter, thank you for your work on this. I think I wouldn't want to say semantics. Semantics is not the right word, but if we're going to pass something without their input, I think it might look a little funny, just as if they were to pass something without our input and present it to us. I think what it needs to be, like Fred said, a give and a take, an ebb and a flow, and teamwork. So however we need to frame this to get this going, but I would not be in favor of just laying it out, this, and this. And the reason I say that, because I don't think any of us fully realize the magnitude of the problem that we're dealing with. We know that it's a big problem. We know that it's serious. We know that it's severe. And I would want to do this as a holistic approach, thinking back to my meeting of about an hour ago, coming in with a big ask, if you will, as opposed to a piecemeal approach or a piecemeal ask. And we're all on the same page. I just think we need to be careful with how we package this and or present it. So if I'm using the right words, great. If I'm using the wrong words, great. I don't mean it any which way or another, other than to say this needs to be a collaborative effort. So whatever that looks like.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Amy.
That's totally consistent, yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Peter.
No, it's totally consistent. In other words, I wanted to make sure we got this on the table. We have a consensus that we want them to do this. However, a bigger package, however it's presented, is fine. I just want to make sure staff gets working on drafting something to bring back to us on this. That's all.
Yeah.
Just judging from our conversation that I just had a half hour ago or maybe an hour ago, they're already on board with this. You know, it's not a surprise, and I don't think it's even in the ask column. It's something that should traditionally be done anyway. It's just maintenance. We're just recognizing that the responsibility is for them to be maintaining the, quote, natural systems, and they're willing to accept it, and I think we can't just say, go do it. We have to have a memorandum of understanding, and that has to be done through staff. Is that the procedure?
Well, that would,
Carl?
yes, that would be the procedure.
Right.
And that really is all this green sheet is asking
Correct.
for tonight,
And that's-
is for council to direct staff to start working on this. We are not asking council to adopt anything tonight.
Right.
What you have as a background sheet there is simply an indication of what was adopted before. But yes, we would fully expect to be talking to the Water Management District about this and framing it and bringing it back to council with a mutual agreement is the way I see it happening.
Fred?
Well,
Right.
And I think we're all on the same page. I think that since they're the ones that has to approve it, that we should go to them with the scope, which can be roughed out pretty quickly. In fact, Deputy Mayor O'Flynn did a real good job in his green sheet of scoping it out. And then we talk to them, that's staff, the mayor, anyone that gets a chance to talk to them. And then either they will say, well, you guys go ahead and rough out the rest of the whereases, or they may say, we'll do that, we'll take your scope and put it in our standard thing. I think that's a little better way of doing it, but we get to the same result.
Okay. Further, there's been a motion and a second. Further discussion? Roll call, please. Peter, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm good.
Okay, sorry. Okay, roll call, please.
Well, can I make?
Yes.
Right now, the motion is that you're going to direct staff to prepare a memorandum of understanding interlocal agreement, and that's not what we've just all agreed that.
I
we were
think
gonna-
that's semantics, so
Yeah.
whether you call it a memorandum or,
mechanism.
or.
We'll
a
be
scope.
working with the
Yeah.
district on this.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Right.
We're not
absolutely.
It's a collaborative effort.
Yes,
Good.
sir.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, everybody. Roll call, please.
Mayor Simmons.
Aye.
Councilman O'Flynn.
Aye.
Councilman Gibson.
Aye.
Councilman Forbes.
Aye.
Councilwoman Caramba.
Aye.
Councilman DeWitt.
Aye.
Councilman Slaughter.
Okay. This.
Peter, I'd like to make a suggestion. I have another green sheet. Why don't we just hold it till I get there, rather than me be on the up in the ceiling on it. So I should be there about 6:45 or so.
Okay.
So I'll do it at the end.
We'll hold it for now. Okay.
Yeah, I think it'd be easier on everybody rather than have me do it.
Okay.
On Alligator Alley here.
Okay. Very good. Okay, so we're going to move now on to the first reading of the following ordinance, and there is no public comment on this. This is item A, an ordinance of the City of Bonita Springs relating to disaster debris removal from private communities, providing for conflicts of law, severability, codification, inclusion in code, and Scrivener's errors, and effective date, Green Sheet 18-01-0001.
Thank you. And
Audrey.
Thank you, and good evening, and Happy New Year. This ordinance was drafted at a request of actually FEMA while going through the private property debris removal issues. The ordinance is before you. I can explain the ordinance if you would like. I'm requesting at this time that we advertise the ordinance and hold the second reading and public hearing on January 17th, 2018.
Okay.
If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer, or I can
Motion to
talk
go
about the
forward.
ordinance.
Second.
Council, there's on a motion and a second. Further discussion? Fred?
Yeah, I have a real brief question, and in there, Audrey, it says that both the front gate and the back gates of any gated community shall be open. And is that FEMA's request or you? Because really, if the power's on and all that, no community wants to have their back gate wide open. They'll give those haulers, if they're in from FEMA, they'll give them an RFID card or a barcode or whatever to work that back gate, but they don't want it standing wide open because it leaves the whole neighborhood wide open.
I took the ordinance from the draft that FEMA had suggested. I can take out that provision because we do have a separate provision for, at the request of the fire district, back
Oh, yeah.
when Dan Gorley was the fire chief, it's been that long, for Knox boxes, and, which are outdated technology. There's new technology on the gates, but, which I'm sure you can answer better than me.
Yes.
But, so the gates do have technology, and even if there's loss of electricity, there's ways to open it at that point.
Yeah.
So I can amend and modify that provision if you
Good.
wish.
No.
Okay. It's been a motion and a second. Further discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilman O'Flynn.
Aye.
Councilman Gibson.
Aye.
Councilman Forbes.
Aye.
Councilwoman Caramba.
Aye.
Councilman DeWitt.
Aye.
Councilman
Aye.
Slaughter. Mayor Simmons.
Aye. Okay, we're now going to move on to item 10, a second reading and public hearing of the following ordinances, and public comment is allowed here.
Thank you, and I'll read the title block into the record. This is an ordinance of the City of Bonita Springs, Florida, regulating the placement and maintenance of communication facilities in the public rights-of-way, amending Bonita Springs Code Sections 34-40, 34-43, streets, sidewalks, and other public places, Division 2, commercial uses, creating Bonita Springs Code Chapter 38, renamed Communication Facilities in Public Rights-of-Way, providing for purpose and intent, definitions, registration, sanctions for unregistered providers, notice of transfer, sale, or assignment of assets, providing rules, regulations, and general conditions to the placement of communication systems and facilities in the public rights-of-way, requiring duty to notify city of resellers, conditional use of public rights-of-way, providing for wireless facilities, revocation or suspension of permits, and involuntary termination of registration, setting forth an appeals process, requiring fees applicable to those not subject to communication services tax, existing communication facility, insurance, indemnification, construction bond, performance bond, security fund, and enforcement remedies, abandoning of the communications facility, reservations of rights, and force majeure, providing for conflicts of law, severability, codification, inclusion in code, and scrivener's errors, and an effective date. This is the second reading of the ordinance. The first reading of the ordinance was held on December 20th, 2017. The ordinance was prepared by Terrell Arline from Theriac in Spain. He did plan to be here this evening. However, apparently Tallahassee, when there is snow on the ground, they don't have icing equipment, so they were not able to have flights today. And I released him from having to come here. I do have his presentation, and I can go through it. I can go through it either fast, or I can show you some of the pictures, because the pictures are worth 1,000 words of the differences when you have guidelines versus not having guidelines.
Council, what's your pleasure?
I don't think there's any.
Just pictures or not at all?
Yeah, no.
Yeah, 'cause I don't think there's any argument here that we
Right.
don't want
No.
this.
If you don't, if you do not have this ordinance, here's the problem. You are required to allow your rights of way to be used for the microcell DAS, the small little antennas, and they're putting them on street lights. So the beautiful city street lights may have some additional requirements. If you do not have an this doesn't affect the tower requirements on private property. This is strictly for our rights of way. The legislature did not do us too much of a favor as far as this legislation. Of course, we would always treat people non-discriminatory practice, but at the same time, there are multiple providers. Some of these providers, we do get communication services tax money from. Some of them we don't, because they're just passing through the area and they need the area in order to try to keep a resemblance of order and not have our right-of-way looking like a total mess. In addition, having a registration, because otherwise people are just plunking things into our right-of-way without even telling Public Works Department that they're putting things in our right-of-way. This ordinance is necessary.
Mike?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. Pictures or no pictures? Roll call, please.
Councilman Gibson.
Aye.
Councilman Forbes.
Aye.
Councilwoman Corumba.
Aye.
Councilman DeWitt.
Aye.
Councilman
Aye.
Sexton. Mayor Simmons.
Aye.
Councilman O'Flynn.
Aye.
Okay.
Before we leave this
Yes.
item, Audrey, I know that this wouldn't have fit in this, but could you check with the esteemed outside counsel on these issues? Number one, there are areas in the city where we have new FPL power poles. Beside it, we have the old pole, and the reason the old pole is there's no power lines on it.
Right.
It's either CenturyLink or Comcast has got their wires hanging on. They actually pay FPL a fee per pole to put their wires on. We should be able to influence that and say, you know, once that pole isn't a power pole, get rid of it and put that wire over on the FPL pole.
If you wouldn't mind, I'd prefer, instead of working with esteemed counsel, working with Charlotte Miller from FPNL. Prior to the hurricane, I was working with her on the status of the removal of the wooden poles. But I can ask her that question along with the additional
Okay.
carriers and when they're going to be converting and doing the changeover, because she was giving me the schedule, and then, of course, the hurricane struck. So I don't know if it's on task with FPNL at this time or not. But she was looking into it for council. Council previously asked me to do so.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
And I'll get back to that.
And Fred, I'm glad you brought that up, because I know on Windsor Road, that's been a major complaint.
Okay. I'll let her also know locations. So Windsor, and I'll just, Royal, I'll make
Everywhere.
everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Citywide, and I'll find out where they are on the schedule, because I know they were looking into it, but again, after the hurricane, our communications have been more limited. But I think we're now getting to a recovery point. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Audrey?
Yes, the next ordinance is an ordinance amending the City of Bonita Springs Special Events Permit Criterion, Bonita Springs, Sections 6-19 to 6-22, regulating outdoor entertainment events, defining special event activities, establishing permit requirements and application procedures for different types of classes of special event permits, providing appeal and revocation hearing process, providing for violations and enforcement, providing for severability, providing for an effective date. This is the second reading of the ordinance. The ordinance was heard by council on December 20th. Council, you did request the changes to the ordinance, and the changes were made following that. Notably, if you look at the green sheet, what was underlined is a summary of those changes. So in 6-19, mentioning that about the evaluation for city-permitted co-sponsorship eligible events, that definition was significantly modified, as well as 6-20. As far as community support criteria, now council, we can make any changes you wish to that section, but this was my stab at trying to have the significance. Another change inside 6-20 is when council can allow a 3-year permit instead of coming back each year, and this is for off-site. And by off-site, I mean anything that's not within city property. As the license agreements, it does discuss that because we do have a license agreement with one person. There needs to be a compelling beneficial interest, which is a national or international audience. So those were your substantial changes since the last time you reviewed this draft. Laura Taylor can answer any questions as to the ordinance.
Okay.
We look forward to your questions.
Fred?
Yeah, I have one, a suggested minor change, but I talked to Laura this afternoon, and we were talking about not necessarily HOAs or COAs, but any community that has a clubhouse, and usually they have a patio or a lanai or something. And I said, you know, they have activities on those lanais, not frequently, but they do. And do they have to get a permit? And she said, oh no, she says, as long as that's a clubhouse and appropriately zoned, you don't have to do it. And I said, well, could you put something that simple in this ordinance at the right place? And so that's my request. Just a point of clarification, so we don't have to rely on her interpretation.
Laura Taylor, Director of Communications. I talked a little bit with our city attorney about this, about that question, Fred, and the consensus was if they're going to be applying for a special event permit, if it would trigger it because they're going to be hosting an event in the parking lot, then they would have to come through the special event permit process. But if they're zoned for their clubhouse, then the zoning would allow for them to do the recreational activity inside or on their lanai per their zoning.
Right, and so I just said, could you make it just that clear in the ordinance? I mean, I think what you said, I agree with. If you're going to do it in a parking lot or out in a field or something else, it's a different thing. But if it's on the lanai, and if there's a concern about noise, you still have the noise ordinance we have in the city.
I can modify the special event definitions to be very clear that they're excluded from a special event where it has the proper zoning.
Right. That's good.
And I'll put that in the special
And you
event
could say
definitions.
such as clubhouses and lanai, and the lanai of a clubhouse or something. Yeah, good, thank you.
Council?
I just got a
Amy?
Oh,
Greg?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Amy, then Greg,
I have
sorry.
a question. On page 7, it's G2. Will you say at the park, do you mean Riverside Park or just any park? That's my first question. And then do we need something in there where, even though we have a license agreement, that to get a date specific, they have to go through you or something? I think that we talked about that.
They would, it would be Riverside Park when we're
Right.
referring to the park,
Okay.
or parks owned by the city of Bonita
So,
Springs.
Just to,
City of Bonita Springs. And then as far as a license agreement, if they came through, that would be approved through council.
pardon me?
We would bring, if there was an application for a license agreement,
No, if you already had existing license agreement, we're talking about the art show. That we said they had to come a year in advance to get the date specific. Do we need to put that in here, or?
no, I don't believe so.
Because otherwise, the way this is written, according to the license agreement, we could do it like 3 or 5 years in advance, right? Well,
Right.
we don't want to do that.
Well, it was approved by council, so that will allow them the 5-year permit, and then staff will work with the applicant to come through to get approval for each year's dates. That's the typical process that we normally do with them. So, in my opinion, Audrey, correct me if I'm wrong, that doesn't need to be written into the ordinance.
No.
No, okay.
No, okay, so that's provided with the licensing agreement, okay. And then what about, we had received a number of emails in regard to notification where there might be some noise or nuisance of some sort. Do you see any need to do that? We're talking about private property, and I'm trying to think the private property that he could be talking about. It could be someone's home.
Sure.
It could be a commercial property, right?
Mhm.
Right, so.
And we did put in community impact requirements. So with the update of the application, we will be requiring the applicants to notify residences and commercial businesses near the event venue of the event so that they're aware of the event prior to it happening.
But that's after the event. That's.
No, prior to it happening.
Where do you have that?
Let's
I
see.
thought that was when you were just deciding if you were going to deny them a supplemental application.
I'm sorry, it's K, residential, it's on page 8.
But I see that, but is that just, is that for any, when, at what point does that hold, is what?
We'll be working through that with the applications to determine which events would trigger the community impact requirement, but the ordinance does allow for us to do that at a staff level, and it helps to mitigate measures to accommodate the negative impact the event may have on entities that may be affected by the event.
So when you review the application, you would consider this and you could require that they notify people?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm good then.
Greg?
I'm just going back to, kind of to Fred's thing. Doesn't K take care of that? Why are we making a special, why, and sorry, since Audrey already wrote it down, you know, why are we making a special point for, you know, HOAs? If you want to have something at your clubhouse, you got to go through your HOA fees, or your HOA or your clubhouse and determine, okay, hey, I want to have this party or this get together or gathering at the thing, at that clubhouse. I don't know why we've got to write a special thing into it, because again, these are only for 200 plus personnel. I mean, if you're having a birthday party there or a graduation party or whatever, most likely you're not going to come before council to ask for a special events permit to have a birthday party or a graduation party or some type of event at a clubhouse. I think your own HOA fee in those gated communities will take care of that prior to coming to city council.
If I may, I think the only change I would need to do to cover, but I think Councilman Forbes is asking for very specific, and all I would need to do is just add a 2 words to the final sentence in paragraph 2 of the definition of a special event, and that just says this definition does not include functions put on the city on its own property or functions in structures that have been issued a certificate of occupancy and are used as a residential clubhouse or an exhibition building.
Right, and it doesn't have to be an HOA. It can be a COA or just a community that has a clubhouse. There's a
Just
lot
put
of
residential clubhouse.
Yeah.
I'm just looking not to delay it, because if you make that change, we're going to have to re-advertise it.
No, we do not.
All right.
It's within the title block. I don't think, we make changes to ordinances all the time.
Okay.
All I'm adding is what is excluded, the definition of a special event activity excludes events that are used in a residential clubhouse.
All right, just
So-
making sure it didn't change the intent and someone doesn't have a chance to
There could
come
be.
and voice
Well-
their opinion. That's all.
Well, council, your call.
If
Because,
they don't
I
think it
mean-
does, that's fine. I'm fine with that. I'm just looking out for the little guy.
Normally we would not apply a special event permit unless the special event already required a specific number, such as 200 people. By having this in where it's just systematically excluding, it could create a problem. Then the other problem is the internal nature of a clubhouse versus off-site recreational facilities. I heard council received, I was not privy to it, but I heard council received an email on that. And off-site recreational facilities, we had this discussion in 2008, so I apologize, all of council's probably not aware of the conversation, but if an event, and this was what the prior council decided, if an event met the size and the criteria, they need to come in and get a special event permit at a recreational facility. But if it did not, if it was the same as what a residential person could also have, they were not required to. Unless you tell me differently, that's how staff is administering that.
That's good. The concern that Chip brought up earlier, that that was mainly just on co-sponsorship. We're not limiting private organizations from having events in the park, right?
Correct, yes, and I
Yeah.
did talk with him a little bit about that when we went outside, but it is just limiting the fee waivers, the co-sponsorships. It's not preventing anyone to apply for a special event permit or to host an event in the park.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Further discussion? Audrey? Peter? Audrey, go ahead. Yeah, Peter, do you have a question?
No, I just got off of mute to vote.
Okay. He got off mute to vote.
Oh, okay. Sorry, the sound. Do I add the residential clubhouse or not? Realizing that if I add the residential clubhouse, that could cause a problem if the event would trigger. Where now, the way staff has been interpreting it is a residential clubhouse does not need to get a special event unless the event is of a size and nature that requires it.
Right.
Well, and I mean,
I
but
would
you-
prefer
I
not
think
to
you're
make
talking about
changes.
the noise too, though, right? I mean,
Right.
you-
You always talk.
Well, amplification of
Yeah,
sound.
no,
External
absolutely.
Amplification. I would suggest not putting it in and staff continue enforcing the way it does, because the big concern I have is the one hellacious clubhouse that decides to have really good parties that maybe aren't consistent with the adjoining property owner. So that would possibly affect
Yeah,
that
no.
situation.
I agree.
And I would
It's not just the noise in Bonita Bay, it's the noise across the river, right?
well, that's right.
Actually,
Well,
it's
is there a clubhouse?
the closest
I guess-
house to the clubhouse.
Yeah.
Right, they're the ones who are going, but you could have off-site impacts at certain facilities, like the marina. If they had outdoor concert at the marina, there would have possibly go.
Yeah,
beyond.
sure, and they have concerts in the park and I mean,
Right.
right, it's not just the neighborhood, it's everybody around it that can hear it.
Right. I would suggest not putting in languages to clubhouse or the internal nature in the ordinance, and let staff enforce where it needs to be enforced if it's amplified music.
And the notification process, just to drill down a little bit, for the people that aren't in the neighborhood but are affected by the noise, Audrey?
So we've had a complaint in the past where we've had people, I would tend to think this is the notification to the surrounding community. It's going to be interesting as far as enforcement of this, because we have, for example, in Councilmember Carumba's district, we have a popular facility in which there's a person who complains, and they're several thousand feet away, but they can hear it from.
But they rezoned them, though. It went to rezoning, so they don't even need special permits.
They don't need, well,
Right, but we will have to find the factors of how we're gonna put this into place, but Naples also does this, so we have a good model to be able to work from.
Yeah. As long as we're very cognizant of that, and I know it's not easy, I get that, but you can't just, boom, have a party and have thousands of people affected that don't have notification.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I think too that allowing staff to look at it will allow us to customize the outreach program or the outreach requirements based upon what's being proposed.
So, great. Okay, roll call, please.
And that's leaving it out, correct?
right, there's no changes to the ordinance, it's as previously modified, unless council tells me
Yeah, I
otherwise.
apologize on that. Okay, there's been a motion and a second. Further discussion? Roll call.
Councilman Forbes,
Aye.
Councilwoman Carumba.
Aye.
Councilman DeWitt,
Aye.
Councilman
Aye.
Slafka, Mayor Simmons.
Aye.
Councilman O'Flynn,
Aye.
Councilman Gibson.
Aye.
Okay. Audrey, do you have anything else?
There's another public hearing, my understanding is it's been continued, I think John Dolmer wants to talk about that for a moment.
Okay.
John?
Being the Georgia fan that he is, come right up.
Dogs.
Ooh,
It doesn't bother me right now, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, that's
Next Tuesday?
yeah, right,
Good bother.
exactly.
Good evening. And it has come to our attention over the past couple of days that there have been some significant concerns on the timing of this application and the transmittal hearing, among other things, but those are most pertinent to this discussion. As a result of that, we began to realize that we are on the heels of the presentation of the downtown white paper, and there were still several discussions that we were planning to have with you that were based upon that. going forward. One of them would be the discussion on density and intensity and uses. We would also be talking about aesthetics and architecture, the approval process, and a few others to go along with that. Bringing it back to this application that we were supposed to hear tonight, the applicant has requested a continuance in an effort to work with the city going through the process, and we do appreciate them doing that. However, what we'd like to do with you is to discuss when you would be comfortable hearing this continued application. What I would like to do and what I would propose is to have a discussion with you the first meeting in February to discuss density and uses. And after that discussion, maybe the second hearing in February will be when we reschedule or continue this particular application to hear before you to transmit to the state. I don't know if there's any strong feelings about that, or
I would say whatever the applicant's fine with. I don't want to hold up their timeline, so.
I would like to also have our workshop on zoning procedures, the best practices also, which we're supposed to be having with Attorney Theriak.
Yes, ma'am, and I know that the difficulty with scheduling that right now, from what I understand, is the fact that our caseload keeps shifting in terms of when we're expected to appear in court and other attendance required
I
events.
understand that, but I think that that's critical because he's going to help us to understand how all these parts work together.
Yes, ma'am. Well, in terms of how we are looking at this, I don't see that workshop would take place before the second hearing in February. So if that is a concern, then that date is not going to work.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
I don't think we need to hold up the applicant for that, though.
I agree.
One of the things I'm concerned is we have this advertised, it is a display ad, so the display ads are very expensive. Even though we do cost recovery, my preference would be to continue this to a time and date certain, even if we have to continue it again. And I'd like to read the title into the record for the item so that we can continue it properly, so we don't have to re-advertise the transmittal hearing.
Fred?
John, couldn't we get to kind of like mini discussions and presentations on some of the key issues that are in this proposed comp plan amendment? Because I think there's only 2 or 3 things that are the big issues, and we could have many discussions leading up to the actual presentation and all that on the comp plan amendment.
I'm not sure I understand exactly what you're looking for.
Well, it's clear that the zoning workshop, which if Theriak is so busy we can't get it before that is presented, there are items that you could have many discussions on, like
yes,
you
sir.
had in that little thing you did on a Monday, I think it was, but just a little half an hour here and a half an hour there to get us to where we have a consensus on some of the more pertinent issues of that comp plan amendment.
That would be fine. Which items would you like to have covered?
Well, I think the one thing that's a lot of people seem to be interested in or calling me is this thing of, is there double counting? And if there is it our policy to allow double counting, or is our policy not to? Some things like that. And I think the other thing that needs to be revisited, because one of the other things that people keep calling me about is the height. And I did say, I think at that workshop we had on Old 41 that, you know, you've got renderings that show heights of this, but our book of regulations say it can be like that. And not that that's bad, but we either need to fix the rendering or we need to fix the height or something. But I think some of those before that could be helpful without wasting a whole 2-hour meeting time.
Would that address some of your concerns, or is that not?
I'm not prepared to, I don't think so, no. I think it's more fundamental in procedure and process and how the effect of it, because this was going to be over the entire corridor, and we as a council have not even agreed to where we subscribe to what was put out by those preliminary studies that were done. And we don't have an image by the different sectors that are in that map that you showed us and provided us. So I think we have a lot of work to do, because we want a total picture there. We don't just want a little part of it to be a certain way. And I think there's more to this than than it appears. That there's more unintended consequences that I don't think we fully understand unless we have some experts helping us with this. That's my opinion. So that's why I think we need to have more help with this. And anything along the corridor, you know. And the things that Fred brought up were things that I've heard, you know, parenthetically too, about high density, double counting, all the things that we've been talking about for the past 6 months, but they operate much more intensely along the corridor because this is our redevelopment.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, yeah, I make a motion to do time and date certain, so that way we don't lose the money on the advertising, and hopefully we get downtown kick-started.
I think before you...
Yeah, I just
And
need to know-
read the title block.
With the and if I can read that into the record, this is a transmittal hearing. We're opening up the hearing, and then we will continue the hearing to a time and date certain. The hearing is on to amend the Old 41 Town Center Mixed-Use Redevelopment Area Overlay Future Land Use Classification Category as a comp plan amendment to this category, and if approved at a certain time or whenever approved, transmit to the Florida Department of Economic Opportunity through the expedited state review amendment process. I'm going to read the title block into the record, which was advertised, and I do not have a copy of the affidavit of public. During the holiday season, we don't necessarily have the affidavits of publication, but we will check and ascertain and make sure that it was properly filed with the city clerk when it is received. And this is an ordinance of the City of Bonita Springs, Florida, amending the City of Bonita Springs Comprehensive Plan as amended by ordinance number 02-16, as amended so as to amend the future land use element policy 1.1.11.8.5 of the Old 41 Town Center Mixed-Use Redevelopment Area Overlay to allow densities, intensities, and a range of uses to be blended within a unified plan development zoning district, providing for conflicts clause and severability clause, and providing for an effective date and for other purposes. This is a transmittal hearing that will be continued. Would we suggest February 21st as the continuance date, if the council agrees to that date? And that would give time for council on February 7th to have the discussion of the Old 41 density as proposed by your community development director.
Was that what your intention?
If that sounds good to the applicant, if it meets their timelines, then. Okay, that's my motion.
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. Further discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilwoman Carumba?
Aye.
Councilman DeWitt?
Aye.
Councilman Slatter?
Aye.
Mayor Simmons?
Aye.
Councilman O'Flynn?
Aye.
Councilman Gibson?
Aye.
Councilman Forbes?
Aye.
And just so council knows, I am available if there are questions. I know that there was some discussion as to when everyone's comfortable with this. I will make myself available. January 15th, I'm not going to be available for a couple of weeks, but before that, I am happy to sit down and talk as long as you would like.
Well, January 8th, about 8:30.
That's fine. 8:45?
Great. Thank you, John. Audrey?
Yes, I have one item, and thank you. Mayor Simmons and Council, as you know, the city is party to an administrative adversarial action entitled Angler's Paradise of Bonita Springs, Inc. versus City of Bonita Springs, Florida, which is a petition for formal administrative hearing, Florida Division of Administrative Hearings, case number 3252 GM, pursuant to Florida statutes section 286.011 subsection 8. I am advising council that Mr. Theriak and I need advice concerning the litigation and am requesting that the city council convene in a closed attorney-client session to discuss litigation and settlement strategies. Only the city council, city manager, city attorney, and special land use counsel David Theriak will be in attendance. This session will be scheduled for a date to be determined. If this is acceptable, the clerk will give reasonable public notice of the time and date of the attorney-client session as required by statute.
Okay.
Thank you.
Council? We're okay? Okay. Wonderful. Thank you, Audrey. Okay, so you're done now. Public comment? Good evening.
Good evening, John West. Happy New Year to you all. The place is looking marvelous. I drove around today and compared to 3 months ago, it's a miracle that what's happened. I commend you and the staff for everything that you've done to make the place look like nothing has ever happened here. I also commend the Wonder Gardens for what they've done there. They had a hell of a job clearing that place up, and I think they did a great job. I know that you had an ordinance here. I don't want to speak about the ordinance, but I would like to touch on the subject of debris removal, particularly for properties which have HOAs. I believe they're making an effort. Before I go on to that, I'd like to have an idea, and I think the city would like to have an idea how much the total cost of this cleanup was. I know it's considerable, and I know that we're expecting some money back from FEMA. We don't know how much, but some provision has to be made in case of future events of this nature. It's going to cost a lot of money, and I don't know whether we have provision for expenditure of that nature, and I think we need all the help we can get. The HOAs are making an effort, but I believe the mobile home parks should join in that effort as well. They have to come up with some responsibility in the event. I mean, Citrus Park and IBE were a total wreck. It looked like a bomb had hit the place. And I don't know how much the residents of those places are going to contribute in the future in the case of such events happening again. That's all I'd like to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Other members of the public? Hello, Kathy.
Good evening. For the record, Kathy McGrath. If I haven't said it to you, I've tried to catch everyone. Happy New Year. We've had quite an exciting year that just passed, and let's hope that we don't have a repetition of Irma, that it was maybe a 100-year event. Okay. And I didn't get up before about Mr. Flood. Phil Flood's been a good friend of Bonita, and I'm very pleased with what they're doing. It was very, very much needed. What I wanted to bring to your attention, I went to the Bonita Springs Utilities meeting last night, and one of the items on the agenda was the removal of the water tank on Hickory Island, and I just wanted to give you a little update on it. A little background. It was deeded to Bonita Springs by the Lee County Commission in 1981. It's on a 50 by 50 foot piece with very, very restricted usage, and it's in the right-of-way. And there is no reverter clause. And Andy Coble, who's the director of operations, and no one's been clamoring to remove it. He's been trying, and he's been trying to save money too. I guess DEP has an inspection once a year, and I don't think it's coming up till the end of the year, but it's not that that's any urgency, it's just that he's been trying. And I guess it's 151 feet tall, and it's steel. It's going to be cut down. And about the only thing, once they take it, it will be theirs. And it's Pittsburgh Tank and Tower, I believe, is the name of the company that's doing it. And about the only other thing they could do is if there was a small town somewhere that needed a water tank, they would want it. That's just about it. And the board voted to go ahead and hire them to remove it. And they're hoping that when they do it, it'll be like the one in Wisconsin, that they won't be there for a long time. So I know we'd had a discussion before. I believe Amy's husband was hoping that we would take it. You can give him the word. That's just about it. And like I said, let's hope the coming year is a little bit easier for you all than it was with Irma. Thanks.
Thank you, Kathy. Other members of the public that would like to speak? Hi, Trish.
Good evening. I'm sorry I'm very late. It's very cold out there. But on behalf of the Everglades Wonder Gardens, I just wanted to say thank you for everything. Happy New Year. I will be taking the backseat as of March 1st, so I will be the president-elect. And I'm very happy for the past 5, maybe 6 years that I've been on the Wonder Gardens. And it's been a trying 5 years, but I could not be more proud of our council. And I know we've had our differences, but in the end, it comes down to us and our life and our work and our community. And thank you very much. And we hope to see everyone at the Enchanted, February 15th. We will sell out fast, so we look forward to having all of our council there. And thank you, Carl, Arlene, and Audrey, and everyone here, some of our board members who made it through the cold. But thank you so much for everything you have all done. And I wish you a very happy New Year.
Thank you, Trish. Other members of the public that would like to speak? Okay, seeing none. City Attorney's report.
None, sir.
I think you're probably good for now. City Manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We've got the financial reports we've submitted. We stand ready for any questions.
Council?
Okay.
Okay.
Moving on to B, review of the operating agreement for the Everglades Wonder Gardens. The agreement is presented with some changes that have been noted in the green sheet. I would call your attention to the second page of the green sheet on this particular one. Paragraph numbered 3. The underlined portion says, since it will not be city-owned, clarified the parking lot will be jointly used by the city and by the Wonder Gardens. It will be owned by the city. Okay, the parking lot will be owned by the city. So just, that was an error on our part. So the changes have been made. We presented for your consideration, and we stand by for any questions.
Council?
Move to approve.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second.
I have questions.
Further discussion? Amy?
Well, he answered my first question, which was the parking. I said, why aren't we owning it? But I just would have some clarification, well, 2 questions. On the insurance part of it, I reread the risk man's original report on that. So is it the case that we are going to insure the buildings rather than the Bonita Wonder Gardens doing it? That's the way it's...
Let me start on this. So when
Yeah.
we originally, after the hurricane, asked for the risk man to provide us with an analysis at the request of City Council, that was under the complete ownership where they owned it and we were the mortgage holder. We needed to convert the insurance section. That's why I gave you a clean section as well as a marked up section. We changed it to, from being our interest as being the money mortgage to being the actual property owner. So at this point, because we're the property owner, we do have a different risk. So the risk analysis changes. The property will probably be something we want to add as a facility, no different than other city facilities. And I don't believe that the cost difference is that significant, but that doesn't mean that they're, as the initial carrier, they're not required to have insurance. And then just like we require of our concessionaires, like Calusa Ghost Tours, we require them to have insurance to provide us indemnification if somebody gets injured, God forbid, animals.
But it's typical, well, since we own the property, it's typical for us to hold the property insurance on that? Or would that not be
Typically,
normally
both
part of
parties
an
hold
operating
insurance.
agreement?
But let's be clear. So what I would expect would happen is we would hold insurance on it, but our expectation is that the Wonder Gardens Board of Directors would have primary coverage on everything. So
Including
that
the
it would
buildings?
become, if claims were made, it would become a decision as to who's going to pay it. Our expectation is they would cover, they would have the primary insurance coverage, and ours would not play unless theirs doesn't.
And this comes true during litigation. So what happens is, during the course of litigation, we will tender a request for them to indemnify us pursuant to the insurance. And usually the 2 carriers will have some communications to make sure that we're held harmless. Just like we had with Calusa Ghost Tours when there was a slip and fall, and their insurance coverage, I believe, was AIG, and they covered the full thing.
Okay, and then, and in this agreement, they are, again, going back to that original risk man report, some of the, not outside of the buildings themselves, the other parts were not covered, like the trees were not covered properly, you know, is that all, is that, we're requiring them to have that coverage?
Generally, you're not going to be able to get significant coverage for certain items, no different that unless you have special riders.
Right.
And I believe that we don't intend for them to have special riders in the insurance.
So we're not
Because-
requiring them to correct some of the weaknesses that we saw in that original thing, is that correct?
It would probably be very expensive
Difficult?
on their part to obtain that type of insurance. It'd be similar to getting insurance for certain facilities, like your outdoor structures, your windstorm, you're not gonna necessarily, or flood insurance for outdoor, below flood, you're not gonna get insurance coverage, or it's gonna be highly excessive. So, same situation with trees, as far as
Okay.
coverage.
And then I have another question on the separation agreement part of it, where, and I can understand why we would want this because of the donors, if they acquire certain assets, and if there's something written into the donor agreement where they won't let it pass to a third party or something, I assume. So I think that's what you want to have it in there, but we have a provision that if they've acquired certain assets, that even though it doesn't pass to the city, they have to apply them towards advancing the purpose of the Everglades Winter Garden. So that's how we cover that.
Correct.
Yeah,
I mean, again, so
Understood that.
I tried to write up a separation plan, and it's possible that during the course of the separation, if there is ever, hopefully there'll never be
No,
a
I
separation.
know.
But if there is a separation, this sets forth where the parties intend for the distribution of the assets to lie. With the majority of the assets staying at the facility, the exception would be, including any new artifacts, the exception would be things like marketing materials, probably computers inside their offices, unless, again, there was agreement different.
So it's just inconsequential things. Okay, thank you.
Greg?
No, I just going back to the liability insurance, and that's what we're talking about, basically, is liability insurance, not the structure or anything like that.
No, there is structural.
No, I'm
Not
saying
at
the
all.
city will cover the structure part of it, and then the Bonita Springs Wonder Gardens.
They would cover structures too.
Okay.
Yep.
They have property damage requirements also, as far as there to be, the things such as the pole barn, shed, cage, similar structures shall be insured at discretion and expense of BWG.
Okay.
And what would be insured by the city. So there's a division of the insurance, but I believe it's because as tenants, I don't think they can get the structure insurance necessarily.
Oh, yeah, it
think-
just seems
I think
kinda-
that was where
seems kind of
Dennis's
odd, but that's
thinking
okay.
were.
I know, it's strange.
Well, I just know the way it is at the place, my employment, we lease it out to somebody and we hold the structures and they have liability insurance, and if anything happens,
They still have, so if they did something that caused it to come under the professional liability,
okay.
they
That's
still have, we have 2 million in coverage for that we're requesting for them.
Okay, Greg. Steve?
That's it?
Peter? Mike?
My only concern is to the taxpayers. You know, we did spend $3 million on this, and I can't support just $1 a year. Is my feelings on that. So.
Fred?
Yeah, I have a couple. One of them is on page 2. It's item, it's the item that is pertains to the lease, and the old lease, which is being assigned to us, and it's an omission that the original lease says on-site and off-site, and it only says on-site, basically. So I think it should read like the lease said. Then the other thing, which is, and Audrey and I talked about that, I think that the stuff that's on page 7 either needs some kind of a clarification or whatever, because it's clearly what the restaurant operator's supposed to do, and this agreement's between City Council and the Wonder Gardens. So I think a clarification, Audrey explained what it's about. I think you could put a clarification sentence.
Well, again, Dennis provided me as a one-stop. I figured it made sense to put it in here because we probably will be adding that when we amend the, subject to, of course, the tenant agreeing to the amendments. We're gonna make sure that those insurance requirements, because there are some dram laws and some other things in there, we wanna make sure are in there
yeah.
per Dennis.
Okay. Council, anything else?
So Fred, what you're saying on page 3 was it
Well,
should
it says right now it-
it should actually say restaurant to cater events instead of at BWG should be
And
for.
off- and off
Well,
site.
if it said for BWG, it wouldn't matter where it was.
Yeah, right.
Right.
So for instead of at.
Anything that
Got
they
it.
host. And that is what it says, because,
And I guess when it comes to the catering, how is that enforced? Because I have heard reports that the restaurant there has right of first refusal, as that's written in the lease, but I think in reality, from what I'm hearing or have heard, maybe it's not going on any longer, that wasn't what was going on at all. Is that correct, incorrect?
Okay, I could speak to that because in the beginning, when the Twisted Tangle came on board and presented their credentials as two owners, two female owners of the restaurant, both had great expectations for their restaurant. We have yet to see the second owner after we had signed the lease with the first owner, which was Alicia Rhodes. We have offered the restaurant next door, who's been very uncooperative with us, to cater events when we need catering, including the upcoming Enchanted. We had sent out an RFP requesting to certain things that we needed for certain events that we have. And the request for proposal came back from this particular restaurant owner to not meet the needs of what our event is going to take place. But it's not the first time. It's been very difficult to work with the business owner. And look, we're partners here. It's not like we say go somewhere else to eat. It's got to be a win-win, and it's not been that from the beginning. And our shame for not really probably doing a better due diligence for this. And I believe that if you're going to work together, that you need to work together as a whole team, and that's not what we're seeing. So first right of refusal, we can offer that, but if they're not going to give what we need at the time, then we have to move forward for something else. I'll be happy to provide any RFP that we sent, which we did recently for the Enchanted, to you, what we required for that. But we're open, 7 days a week. And the restaurant at times is not open 7 days a week. So if you're open for breakfast and we are open at 9 o'clock and the restaurant is not open at 9 o'clock, what is a person to do that comes to visit the Wonder Gardens? Or if you're closed at 5 o'clock and you want to go eat after the Wonder Gardens, what are you supposed to do? There are no regulations on the restaurant either. So there's kind of inconsistencies to the restaurant owner. And if we could work together to make sure that she is open the same time that the Wonder Gardens is open and beyond for her, then I think that will be helpful, especially for the city going forward, with the restaurant and some of the rules and regulations that you have. It's not a one-sided deal. Please understand that. It's not a
So
one-sided
they
deal.
do have the right of first refusal?
They do have the right of first refusal, along with making sure they can accommodate the things that we need. So yes, sir.
And do they pay the Wonder Gardens rent?
They have paid the Wonder Gardens rent $1,000, and there's times that she could not afford to pay the rent, or say, especially during the construction time and during some other times, and we have waived her rent. Or to say waive, but the word, I'm not an attorney, but to not for her to have to pay. But yes, there has been times when we have done that, and it's in our minutes, and you're certainly, sir, welcome to read that. We have tried to work with her, and she's not the easiest person to work with, but that has nothing to do with there's personalities there. But the restaurant has to also be available to the consumers when they come on property. This past week, we've had a really great week with visitors and guests coming all over to the Wonder Gardens, and you don't know if she's open or not. So there has to be some consistency of when she's open. If she's going to open 9 to 5, say you're open 9 to 5, not till the food runs out.
So what is the arrangement with the restaurant moving forward in terms of rent?
I don't have that in front of me, to be honest with you.
Fred?
Maybe Carl may.
Well, the only thing that I would say is, I don't think it's for this city council to change the terms of the lease. If they want to go to court and change it, that's fine. But It is not the city council's business to change that lease.
Okay.
And I believe, my understanding is the lease was written by the Wonder Gardens.
No, that is not correct. That was not written by the Wonder Gardens, it was written by an attorney. We wanted somebody into the restaurant when we first took on the Wonder Gardens. And Alicia and her partner at the time, who we've never seen after that, wanted, had certain expectations which we agreed upon. But nothing has come correctly. And if there was a give and take on both parts where, again, if she was open every day of the week, 9 to 5, 10 to 7, whatever, that would have been great. But you never know. You never know when she's open. And anybody can drive down there, lunch or dinner or breakfast, and you want to go there on a Sunday after church, she's not open. Or maybe one day she is, or whatever. So I think there needs to be definitely some opportunity for her to talk, and maybe she needs some critique. We even invited Florida Gulf Coast University's College of Hospitality to help her understand the importance of hospitality and consistency. And that is what we had offered her, and she, took on that as well. So, there has to be a give and take here, and it's not just one way on our part. I'm sorry, but it's not.
Only point I make again, they had that lease with her for, 2 years. If they had that problem, they should have fixed the lease. It's not up to our city council to get in and interfere in the terms and conditions of that lease. I mean, that's my point.
And during that time, there was a lot of issues. There was some construction downtown. You could blame it on a lot of things, but other businesses downtown were doing whatever they could to stay in business and open their doors. So, it's not just a one-time operator problem. There's a give and take to everything. And I ask each of you to take a look at both areas and make your own decisions on how this is going to run, because now that you all will be the owners of the actual property, and yeah, we may be the contractors, you have to be able to work together, but don't look at it one-sided. It is not a one-sided deal. It's everyone. I mean, just check it out for yourselves.
Well, I'm not disagreeing with that. I just said I don't think it's our place to get in and resolve a problem that's existed between the two parties.
Hold on, that's what.
Audrey has
Well, I guess my question is to Audrey, is there in the contract between the Twisted Tangle and BWG, is there a severability clause that where it says if it is severed, the contract is null and void? Or are we going to have to negotiate this new contract with them?
I do not know if there is a severability. I have not looked at the agreement for that, and I don't have it on me
Okay.
right now. But I do want to point out that it'll be assigned to the city. The city will work with both the restaurant as well as Wonder Gardens, and when I say the city will, if you look at paragraph 13, it'll be the city manager. And if the city manager needs to have modifications to the lease, either one or with Wonder Gardens, again, we may need to have amendments as we go through. He'll provide those recommendations to you at that time.
I have a question. When you get a lease assigned, you have an ability to alter it, or what happens?
Normally, when you do a lease assignment, it's an assignment as is, but this agreement has already had, I believe, 3 or 4 amendments. So it's not unreasonable to think that we may be needing to do amendments both to the lease as well as the operating agreement.
Was there a term on the lease?
There is. I don't remember it right.
What's the term?
5. It started out as 3, but it was amended to 5.
So there's like 3 more years running? 2 are gone and 3 to go? Is that what it is?
Something like that, yeah.
Maybe a severability clause. I know in our contracts, we put a severability clause.
Well, it would be staff's recommendation that we accept the assignment of lease and that we work with the tenant. And hopefully there would be a different relationship, but also that the lease would be structured in such a way that everyone's very, very clear on their responsibilities and roles. And as the city attorney indicated, I would be managing that lease.
Fred, go ahead.
Well, am I not right in saying that you can have any kind of visions you want about that lease, but you can't arbitrarily change and say you have to sign a new lease because they've got a lease? Basically, you're taking over the lease.
But if there are changes to, in order to their benefit, they may agree
Well,
to
yeah,
changes.
I said arbitrary. You can't
No.
assume that.
Is there any change to the lease being affected by this?
I'm looking at the leases right now.
No, this agreement.
This agreement doesn't change the
This just
lease.
does an
Yeah, it
assignment.
doesn't.
Yeah.
So what's the
So
problem?
there's no
There's no
change.
change to the
Right,
lease at this time.
except that in this particular case, in our rewriting of the obligation of the Wonder Garden, we've said only on-site as opposed to what it used to say.
You mean that second sentence of A,
Yeah,
Fred?
all I said was
That says all sorry.
on-site.
Th-
And the
I
lease-
hate to get into Audrey's job, but I mean,
Okay.
to me, this language says that it just recites, you don't even have to recite it, but it just recites that the obligations that the Wonder Gardens have under that lease continues.
Right.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah, but
it's-
it also says, specifically with that, referring to that clause,
Right.
that it's at their facility, and the original lease says both at the facility and off-site.
I'm sorry, where does it say? It must be a different section.
It's on page
In the
3 of the
original
clean
lease.
copy. The
I'm
one-
looking at page 2,
Page 3.
of page 3, and then the very first item.
All right,
7A.
so I'm sorry, Fred. Let me read it again. Oh, I follow what you're saying. So you're saying, all right, all existing obligations of the Wooden Gardens for the right of first refusal to cater events at the Wonder Garden shall remain.
Right, and the lease
So-
itself says at the Wonder Gardens or on-site and off-site.
Yeah, I don't know what,
Yeah.
you weren't attempting to change anything, were you, Audrey?
The change I made was all existing obligations by BWG for right of first refusal for the restaurant to
Right.
cater events. I took out and put for BWG shall remain.
Yeah,
So
okay.
there's
And-
a
and-
tail for that
And,
obligation.
and and I want everybody to understand, I'm not saying that, I don't want us to
Either
be
way.
the enforcer
Either
of
way,
this.
Yeah.
I just don't want it altered by us, because that's not.
Yeah, I don't think she was intending that.
Yeah, right.
No, right. At this point, if there's an amendment, we'll do an amendment to the agreement, and that would have to come back to council.
And I full well understand everything Teresa said and don't disagree with it, so
Yeah.
if you're not open, you gotta be open to provide services, so.
And for Councilmember DeWitt, there is no severability clause within the actual lease agreement, but there is representatives to be bound on the respective successors, representatives and assigns of the parties. So once there's an assignment, the parties, Twisted Tangle, would have the obligation to the city as if they had it to Bonita Wonder Gardens, and the city could enforce it accordingly.
Okay.
Council, anything else? Okay. It's been a motion and a second. Further discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilman DeWitt?
Aye.
Councilman Slackton?
Aye.
Mayor Simmons?
No.
Councilman O'Flynn?
Aye.
Councilman Gibson?
No.
Councilman Forbes?
Aye.
Councilwoman Carumba?
Aye.
Okay, great. Very good. Okay, let's see. We are moving along now to mayor and council member items. Amy, why don't we start with you?
I'm just going to tell you what I've been doing, and I don't have anything specific. I did meet with Arlene and Tiffany Esposito of the Chamber, and we had a discussion about ongoing projects that are being explored in regard to ride hauling that are supposed to extend between 3 counties, Lee, Collier, and I forgot the other one, Charlotte? Charlotte, yeah. But that's a long-term incoming, but it was interesting to have a conversation because I also integrated it with my interest in trying to work on something with access to the beach. And the way we left it is that we would try to see if there were any drop-off or parking places that we could explore going forward. But again, these are long-term ideas, but with the idea that Lee County would have to be involved with transportation from the dropping or the parking places to the beach, and just the whole feasibility is kind of wide-ranging and nothing specific. But I just wanted to tell you what we were talking about. The other thing that let me say, the water tower, actually, the water tower was on my list, so I'm glad we got the answer for that. And and I also talked to Tiffany about the interest in working on the landscaping, or on Bonita Beach Road where they put the shells down there, you know, that we have an interest in not continuing that and improving that, just so that we could bring her up to speed on that. And the other thing we talked about was the fact that the economic development focus for Bonita is on the small businesses rather than the larger businesses, and that was it. So that's all I'm basically, and I'm still working on the biking, trying to get the bike trail somewhat maintained on a consistent way across the various jurisdictions. But these are all works in progress, so that if we ever get to somewhere, you won't be surprised if we ever get somewhere. So that's what I'm doing.
Okay.
That's it.
Great, thank you. Greg?
No, I just wanted to comment on Rita Voorhees had asked a question about the river and stuff like that, and I had the HOA president and vice president also speak to me before that. I just wanted to bring everybody up to speed that one of the newspapers put out a comment about what South Florida Water Management's doing from, like, I think it's from Old 41 to Matheson. They're doing that. Then they're going to go from I-75 out to the Kiel Canal. Their concern was what's going to happen in between there. You know, they're going to open up the river to the east and everything that's going to hit by the IBE area and bottleneck and flood that area again. Just wanted to rest assured, I talked to Phil Flood before the meeting and a couple days before that. What it is Southwest Florida Water Management picked those two areas because Florida DEP were taking the other areas involved. So the whole entire river is getting looked at and taken care of per se. But what was published in the newspaper was that it's only these two sections and not to worry about the middle section. That's being taken care of by Florida DEP. So just want to let everybody know that, and Happy New Year.
Great, thank you very much. Steve?
Happy New Year, I'm good.
Happy New Year, you're good. Okay, wonderful. Peter?
I've got a leftover green sheet, which I can dispose of quickly. It's more kind of an aide-memoire for everybody in terms of the quadrant. I thought it'd be helpful for council to have it. There's nothing really new in here. At the MPO, we're working with Don Scott. I say we, it's Matt, Carl, and I went to a meeting yesterday up in Cape Coral to talk to Don. Don is executive director of the MPO, being very cooperative with us. That's an understatement, as is the case with FDOT. At these talking points, some of it relate to the MPO and make it clear that this is not just Bonita Springs issue. This is, if anything, a quintessential regional transportation issue, the problem at the quadrant. And Fred made that point where we sat there last month. So that's it. That's just background on that. Also, next week, Don Scott, actually, Nick Betos and I are traveling to Tallahassee overnight to come back the next day to appear before the Office and Greenways and Trails Board that's going to make the decision with respect to whether or not Seminole Gulf Railroad is kept as a priority trail. As you know, the staff had recommended that it be downgraded to an opportunity trail. We have a total of something like 850 emails that have gone from Estero and Bonita Springs in support of this. So there's a big silver lining on that cloud. A lot of people have spoken out, along with organizations. Lastly, I sent a note around to council. I'm having a follow-up meeting tomorrow with Commissioner Kiker on issues that I had emailed council about last time. Carl's going to come. Roger Dargelet is going to be there as well. Things like Big Hickory Island, the landscaping on Beach Road, the whole Lee Tran issue, the quadrant plan, not the MPO part of it, but just vis-a-vis Lee County, and whatever else I had on that list. So if anybody wanted me to add anything or if I'm missing something, I mean, we've been through all of this a bunch of times. So, and I'll obviously report back. So that's it. Thank you. Happy New Year, everybody.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for what you're doing.
Yep, thank you, Peter. Fred?
Yeah, let me add on what Deputy Mayor Flynn has said. Anyone on this council that is very good friends with anybody that's a voting member of MPO, we need to some way let them know we need their vote. Because it's going to come down to votes, and going to be very interesting how it comes out.
And Fred and I and Peter cannot talk to them.
Right.
So, yeah.
So the,
Except at the meeting.
right, except to me. But these all can because they're not
Right.
on MPO.
Right.
So the other thing I was going to point out, just adding one thing to what Greg said about the Imperial River cleanup of South Florida Water Management District has said that it's their intention, once Imperial is cleaned up to the keel, that they're going to go and pursue cleaning up Oak Creek and then Spring Creek. So that's another plus. I talked to Jim Beaver just to make sure, because I thought somebody had asked me, but he just sent to Adkins, the engineering, the things he wanted to get from them for each of the areas that we had flooding. And they're estimating that they'll have the information that he wants back to them around the 14th of this month, which that means that he said he would get his first draft of the report to us around the 22nd of this month, and then it would go to all of council, plus Matt Feeney and anybody else on staff that's interested, for your review comments so that he can adjust the report where possible to answer any questions or maybe incorporate another idea or whatever. And that's about it.
Okay, great. As you know, we've kicked off our outreach committee. We've a few months now, and one of the charges that one of the members of that committee has taken on, Juan Romero, I think many of you know him, is to kick, we have had some, and Laura is familiar with this, we've had some sister city programs in the past, and we've been approached by Isla Mujeres, Mexico, which is opposite Cancun, an island off of Cancun. And I'm going to read the letter that they sent. Mayor Peter Simmons, Bonita Springs, Florida, USA. Dear Mayor Simmons, as always, it is my pleasure to extend our warmest greetings on behalf of the citizens of Isla Mujeres and the members of my administration. As you may know, the municipality of Isla Mujeres, of which I am honored to be the president, as well as the community as a whole, are deeply interested to formalize our fraternal ties that for many years have united our cities. To this end, I am happy to report the formation of the committee whose sole purpose is to facilitate and strengthen our relationship. The committee, it must be noted, represents different sectors of our society. We have identified several topics that could be part of our agreement, and of course, that we are open to many others. They are as follows: cultural and educational, food and beverage exhibitions, handcrafts, language courses, fishing and navigation techniques, student exchanges, economic development, tourism, promotion, technical assistance, specifically in the prevention of natural disasters and public safety, environment, the exchange of experiences related to the handling and exploration of natural resources, health. With these in mind, and to establish a more direct contact, I have appointed Jose Luis Castillo Magana, Tourism Board Director, to do whatever is required to achieve our agreement and to report to me whatever is needed from our part to crystallize our long-standing relationship with the city of Bonita Springs. Please let us know if there's something else we can do. Yours sincerely, Juan Luis Correa Sabarinas, Mayor of Isla Mujeres. So, Laura, I know I was unable because I was in Tallahassee at the last meeting. Was this discussed in any length? I know that the outreach committee is looking for direction from council, if it would be okay to pursue this, and I just wanted, Laura, your feedback as liaison to that committee.
Sure. Laura Taylor, Director of Communications. We didn't end up having a quorum. It was right before the holiday, so we did not discuss it. It was left at the last part that we talked about previously, where they had asked for you to bring it up to council, and if council would like to support it, they could go forward.
Right. Okay. So does anybody on council have problems with
No,
this committee
that
moving
sounds great.
forward on this?
Just the reverse.
Okay, great. All right, fantastic. And do we need a vote on this, Audrey?
No, sir.
Okay, Okay, wonderful. It's unanimous, even though there's no vote. Okay.
Right, exactly.
Okay, fantastic. And I have and thank you, Juan, for this. Look, we have had sister city programs in the past. I think one was with Germany.
Germany, right?
And I don't know. I can't speak from experience what that was like. I'm sure it was wonderful, but I can tell you there's some excitement and some enthusiasm around this one. So thank you very much, council. Anything else, council? Move approval of the minutes?
So moved?
Okay. Motion to approve the minutes? Roll call, please.
Councilman Slackton.
Aye.
Mayor Simmons.
Aye.
Councilman O'Flynn.
Aye.
Councilman Ford.
Aye.
Councilwoman Caramba.
Aye.
Councilman Gibbons.
Aye.
Okay, great. And public comment? Any members of the public that would like to speak at this point? Seeing none? Okay. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved. We are adjourned.